welcome to the evening session of our 2023 Winter Convention. My name is John Jeffrey and I head up our community team at BCS. In our lunch session today, we heard from Alistair Rebel and changes taking place in governance, and particularly the responsibilities of Community Board. Holly Porter, using the new title, Managing Director of BCS Institute, gave a performance update and some of those highlights over the last quarter with nods towards upcoming activity. And we ended the session just sharing some reflections on the establishment of the Community Support Committee and good practice that they're creating. This evening, we're looking to get a bit more focused, so much more focused content on the theme of content, quite usefully. And with me, we have Ben Turner, Head of Product. I'll be introducing Ben shortly, but just give an overview of the session. We'll be talking through the approach to content and to CPD, and then looking a bit into the how, so very much focused on how do we kind of utilize member group content being currently created for access by the wider membership as CPD. And then we'll just come back at the end and have a bit of an information share and look at a couple of questions around how groups are currently planning their content and events, as well as a couple of other questions to get you thinking around CPD and ideas for how you might help us deliver CPD content to members. So just a couple of the kind of house rules. Everybody's was obviously paying attention this lunchtime, so just make sure that you have your mics on mute during presentations. There'll be a chance for Q&A. We'll actually take Q&A just after Ben's presentation, as I know Ben's due to get a train shortly, so we'll take Q&A straight from Ben after he's finished his presentation. Any questions that you have, please use the chat. I'll be helping to sort of moderate that and put those questions to Ben, but equally, if you'd like to raise your hand, we'll also invite you to kind of to ask your question directly. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Ben Turner, our Head of Membership Product. Over to you, Ben.
Evening, everyone. How are you doing? I hope everyone's had a great day and achieved all the things you need to achieve for today so far. So I'm looking forward to sharing some content with you now. So let's just make sure I can actually share my screen effectively first. If John, you could give me a quick thumbs up to let me know that that has all gone through nicely as well. So thank you very much for that. As John said, yeah, my name is Ben Turner, Head of Membership Product. I've been on a bit of a mission since I've joined the business around content and CPD. So in the interests of good presentations, hopefully I can move that on. Yeah, just wanted to go through a little bit about where CPD content fits in, and it's important to distinguish CPD content, what we're talking about here. Otherwise, we get drawn into content like our PR content or our editorial. This is about CPD content, or I'd like to put it as value-added membership content, something that enriches a member's experience and for their membership. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Talk about this concept now that we're developing around insight on demand, or access to community on demand, or access to membership on demand. And we are in the process of building our CPD content portal that will allow members to access the content that we're discussing on this. And then, of course, there's always an ask, as I'm sure you're used to, but we're really looking forward to working with you and the great work that you do on a day-to-day basis throughout the year, and how we leverage that and how we can really utilize that to give an on-demand experience to our members. So that's what we're looking to go through today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your questions and any feedback later on in the presentation. So let's go through, first of all, what it was that we started seeing around content itself. And in our format, we look at problem statements. And rather than me just reading this off to you, but the relationship between membership value, how a member receives value for their membership fees, and how we are giving them value via content and different things, was something we really needed to get under the skin of. We were doing lots of great work, and that absolutely includes the events and the content and the research that's put out by our communities and our wider environment. So all this was happening, but it felt that it wasn't connected enough, and that the value that was actually being produced wasn't utilized enough either. So again, this content, this CPD content, has been quite the project at the moment, and we wanted to ensure that we're delivering great value for our members and also utilising the great insights that's created through our communities. So why are we doing this? Why is this important? Let's go back to the fundamentals. We are looking at membership as being ethical, competent, accountable, and inclusive. And if CPD content can help us with being ethical and competent, that's a real win for us. And it's really important to how we share the membership experience with our members. So really, really important in terms of that ethical competence and how we make IT good for society. So let's not lose track of the fundamentals of what it is we're doing as a membership experience and getting people excited about membership. But the members were asking this as well. So 25% of members were leaving due to the value of the membership product. Did they see enough value in their membership? And 10% were leaving because they didn't see a connection between their membership and their career development. And I think 25% is the higher number, but there was certainly a feeling through our anecdotal exit interviews that they weren't seeing the value to their career as well as the value of the membership product itself. So of the leavers, 25% and 10% were making these statements. So it was something that the membership was calling for. I do believe that we do things that members ask us for, but also to be proactive about what members need or how we can help our members in the IT profession in terms of their development. So we saw that through the research we were conducting, that 25% of people fear their current roles will advance past their current skills. So how can we help people to address that gap? And again, CPD content being something that we could really begin to assist the community with. 70% of employees didn't have mastery of the skills needed to their job. It's quite a frightening statement. This wasn't just in tech, by the way. But again, this is what we're seeing from the marketplace and the value of the sort of things that we're talking about here and the value that you guys provide for us on a day-to-day basis. We also were looking at learning styles and seeing that 58% of workers prefer to learn at their own pace. Again, really important that we build an experience tailored to the way that people want to develop themselves. And again, that on-demand aspect was a really important part of this project. And 60% of tech employees believing their tech skills are essential to job security. So if we can help them with that journey, that skills acquisition, that we're actually helping them with their job security and what could be more important at the moment to so many people, given our current climate, which is a phrase that I was hoping not to use, the current climate, but actually look forward rather than back. So 70% of workers learn their abilities on the job. Again, that was a really telling statistic that we were researching and shows the importance of, while you are in your career, how CPD can actually help you with your with the skills that you require for your role. So yeah, there was the context that we wanted. So how does this affect our membership value proposition? And again, without reading off the slide, for me, it was around our membership value being as good as the content we give them, but also how they access it. And I know I've been saying on demand a lot, but this is about on demand, how people can learn at their own pace and on demand. We want to make sure we're connected to other products, so people who do their personal development plans can actually see how they can set a plan for personal development and ensure that they can then access the learning that they require against that plan, all under the membership banner. So that was really important to us as well. And the final part of it, but really important part, was making sure we're connected to the other products that are in our suite and that I'm sure so many of you guys know about, in terms of making sure that CPD is available to help you with your registrations, that is helping you through a qualification. We're even mapping some content for students who are going through university accredited degrees or even T levels. There'll be content available to help people with their studies. So it's really quite a key initiative, because it places this idea of content right in the middle of everything we do. So a quick, what does good look like? As I said, for me, or for us, it was around the members completing their PDP tool or establishing what they would like to achieve from their own development over the course of the coming year. That the member benefits assist in that learning need, how they interact with community events, how they interact with the CPD portal, how they interact with networking, things along those lines that actually help them to progress through their career. We are at the moment looking at things like badging, but it's also that they're receiving the raw content, the raw skills insight, but also we can badge it and we can then have them contribute towards registrations. And then hopefully the member then renews, progresses, does a new PDP, and as they progress through their careers, they're going to need different types of content. We want to make sure that we've got content that assists every step of the way, that covers all the personas that you hopefully have heard about over the last 18 months. In the way that I look forward to working with our community is having a circular feedback loop. So as we look at the content that already is being produced by our communities and that I've seen so much of and worked with certain areas with as well, members can feed back over its quality and where things are missing. We can share with you the reporting. What did it look like? What did members really like? What do members want more of? Or do they perhaps need less of? So again, we can share that reporting with our community groups, other parts of BCS that produce content, our editorial teams, to ensure we're developing our content against the needs of a member requirement. So hopefully we can add value to what you're doing so we can really attach to the needs of our membership, increase their participation in the communities, but also helping to keep that the content and the event subjects as apparent to what the membership requires as possible. So hopefully that's the aspiration, and I know we can achieve it. I'm really bullish around how we can actually get to that, and I'm sure we will. So what does this look like in practice, perhaps? Well, first of all, it's important to acknowledge the community already produces great content. So it's what we do with it as much as how we want to work with the community more. So again, it's worth acknowledging that the content's already there, but I think what we can do is connect the dots better. So any questions you may have been asking about, well, what do members actually really want to see? What do they want from us? We can support our communities from an HQ perspective. I wouldn't mind just pausing on this area as well, because I do think this is a special, and we've all heard unique selling points, and they're never really unique. But in a world where we've got the internet and we've got LinkedIn Learning, we've got Google and we've got YouTube, where does our content, where does what we do really add value? And it really does add value because we have industry practicing experts as part of these community groups. We have academics that are massively engaged with best practice. So our ability to aggregate content and insight and make it available on demand really is very unique. And it's actually a great place to be, where we can share practice from a vertical with another vertical, or someone's perspective on one subject with another person's perspective. This is, as far as I am aware, or I'm sure, is a unique selling point, and it's because of the participation of our membership with these kinds of initiatives. So I think that's a really important point to make. It is unique value, and it's going to help us to have more touch points with our communities, with our events, with our networking. We can share more of what's going on in the community with more of our members, and hopefully that's going to be a symbiotic relationship. So members will then participate more and hopefully even begin to share their thoughts and ideas with our community leaders as well. So see, this is a really positive initiative. As discussed before, really aligned and joined up with our member benefits. So if people require coaching and mentoring that's come out of their PDB tool, we've got products around that. If people want to just learn by looking at events or on-demand content, they can do that. If they want to network with best practice or strategic leaders, they can access that through their communities as well. So again, we become part of the solution to the career aspirations of our membership. And as I said, hopefully, well, not hopefully, it will promote the value of community groups, and we'll see so clearly the value of community groups to BCS as well in a different way as we perhaps done before. So here's the ask, and John's going to go through a bit more of the practicalities when I finish my little presentation, but it's worth thinking about this in this context. So first of all, worth acknowledging that not all community events are CPD content. You have your AGMs, you have your different meetings. We don't need to record everything. We don't need everything to be made available on demand. But I guess where we're pivoting towards is where there are events and where there is content that would be really useful to members outside of that in that meeting. How can we capture it in a way that it's really consumable for that member offline, as well as if they're actively participating? So, and John will be going through a little bit around our event capture form, but also trying to again create that feedback loop about what's a great way to produce or set up an event. What tools and what products do we need to use to make sure it's really positive? How do we set out the event? How do we encourage people to do takeaways? How do we capture it so it's absolutely of value to those in the room who are interacting live, but also of value to those post-event? So that's something we'll be on a learning journey with, and we look forward to getting better and better at that as we progress and produce more content. We want you to get involved, and of course want you to get involved with the marketing, the promotion, the socials. Content is our window to the socials. We can go out and start talking in 1-minute videos about the great things that we'll be talking about within our community groups, the new thinking around AI or cyber or whatever that may be, and pushing it out into our socials. So again, your participation in that will be great to really accelerate members' interaction with everything that you guys do. And of course, we want to engage with reporting and the feedback loop that I described earlier. So we are non-stop learning. So we're non-stop getting feedback from members and you guys to help us to really produce fantastic membership experiences. So I'm going to take a pause because I'm conscious that's been 15 minutes odd of me sharing a vision with you guys. There may be, and I'm sure there'll be some questions around that, but I think my leaving position will be just how important you are to it, how we think it's going to really accelerate hopefully your plans and your aspirations in terms of what you give to membership, but also how unique this value proposition looks like, but how connected it is to everything that BCS are trying to achieve. So thank you so much in advance for your questions and your interest, and hopefully your support ongoing. John, is that okay? Is that over to you? Please let me know what questions we've got coming in.
That's great, thank you. We've got a question from Sharon. Sharon, how are you? Long time no see.
I'm well. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. So my name is Sharon Levy. I'm part of the BCS Health and Care Scotland, and my job title is CPD lead for the health data science in health and social care. So I'm really impressed with the presentation and the direction of travel. Thank you, Ben. A few questions. You talked about skills. I like to talk about 3 things: skills, knowledge, and attitudes. And I think these added elements are important to remember when we talk about CPD. But my question is really about the pedagogy that underpins the drive in the BCS. For example, you talked about learning styles. I would like to think that we look at different pedagogies like experiential learning, for example, where the learner reflects on the events and then capture some of the thinking, the deep thinking, and align it to their own professional development. And in terms of the product that I would like to see or help to bring to the fore is the content grid that is bolted on the idea or the artifacts that are part of the BCS. So, for example, BCS Health and Care Scotland, last year in November, we produced a lovely event called the Derek Hoy Memorial Lecture. So 1 hour of a thinking, we invited a speaker, and I would have liked to get something to bolt onto the recording to enable learners to reflect on the experience and the learning, and then put it onto the professional development plan. And the final thing is the search. How do we find all the rich artifacts that are being held by the BCS, and how are they tagged to enable us to understand which belongs to health, which belongs to care, which belongs to informatics, which is data science, how they all relate. Do we have the matrix? Thank you.
So thanks, Sharon. And first of all, I may have to take you up on that offer to for additional support in some of the things around pedagogy. And for me, it's always going to be at learning place to see what people want to utilize. But any starts and advice and how you guys set up will be of great interest. As John Jay will probably testify, I've been going on about tagging for quite some time. It was quite early on in the whole process that the tagging was so important, because it creates that process from PDP to later on. We do have a tagging taxonomy now that we've looked to make sure that we are. It's one of those things, without wishing to go into detail, that you don't want it too big, because otherwise it becomes useless, and you don't want it too small, otherwise no one can find anything. So we went through a tagging taxonomy which we think is going to work, and I think it will be fit for purpose. It will probably need a bit of a review after 6 months, and then it will be something that will stick to us for a long time. It's not the sort of thing I'd want to change on a monthly basis, as you can imagine, but certainly it picks up things like the Sophia category. So we wanted to make sure it was aligned to Sophia, to pick up things like industry specialisms or job role specialisms and things along those lines. So rather than going through the whole tagging taxonomy, that's where we started for. But again, we try and be realistic that when we launch, we'll be hopefully 95 to 99% there, but might need some tweak later on. So tagging's been a really important part of what we're doing to make sure then we can also badge and award and progress as we see fit. So yeah, that's been something that's been key on our list.
Right. And for those for the rest of you, me and Ben had a bit of a giggle actually, because my part of the presentation on the how is basically the form in which we capture information so we know what content's being produced and are able to tag it, categorize it, and then make sure we're surfaces it to the right audiences. So that's my presentation done. But
and John, so I've just missed the last part of Sharon's question. Is we are going back into the archive. My principle around that, and again, John knows I always sort of like to go from a principle level, is trying to look forward, not backwards. But there may be holes immediately that we want to try and fill, and then I'm sure there'll be questions out to you guys going, did anyone produce something that looks a bit like this? And you guys will go, yeah, we did a brilliant event 2 years ago that's still relevant today. Why don't you go and pull that out? Otherwise, we're just going to be in a space where we're trying to tag 1,000 pieces of content from the last 5 years. So we want to try and make sure we're dipping in and out of the content for where we've got holes, to try and look forward rather than too much back. But absolutely, we've got an archive. Why would we not use it?
Okay. Thank you very much, and Sharon, some great questions, and
yeah, thank you.
We offer support, and you certainly have the expertise, so could help benefit this program. Just coming on to a couple of other questions. So Simon, who chairs our Oxfordshire branch, they do a lot of kind of general interest and in-depth presentation by experts. Are you asking the groups to do more than that, or is it a case of, I guess, us just utilising that production a bit better?
Yeah, I think the latter. And look, people want to display content in different ways, and people want to absorb content in different ways. So I don't want to be too prescriptive. Oh, every presentation must be 8.5 minutes long and divided up. No, but what we also have to appreciate that if there was an hour-long subject matter expert, that we might need to break that down into 20-minute slots or something along those lines. So we don't want to be too overly prescriptive, but this is where the feedback loop will work, because we'll begin to see, hang on a minute, if it's in this format, it will get more attention than in a different format. So the advice, for want of a better word, is the members will let us know. And if we find one thing working, or if we see holes, we can share them with you guys, and you can react and plan accordingly. So if the sort of things that you're producing aren't getting as much attention or being absorbed as much as other stuff, we can share that with you, so you can maybe adjust if you feel that that's irrelevant, or keep on doing great stuff if it's getting the traction that you require. So today, no, we don't require much more than that. But as we move forward, there might be some things that we can do, or you might want to implement, that would help leverage the great work that's going on in those community groups.
Thanks, Ben, and thank you, Simon, for the question. And I think Dave Donahue just followed on with that. I think from his perspective that he shared, the idea of kind of going back and watching an hour recording of the event isn't very appealing. So I guess that's where the creativity comes in, right? And if we're thinking about a new format for sharing content with members, then it's being able to go, well, okay, maybe let's think about those activities slightly differently. Of course, if you're bringing everybody into a kind of physical event, you probably want to have them entertained for a sort of an hour or so. But if someone's just going to pop online to pick up a bit of content, then that's a very different, a very different experience that one may need to consider in future. But the great opportunity is, and it's a really crude way of explaining it, but there is an opportunity to sort of very quickly industrialize what we do around CPD because of the amount of activity taking place across our groups. And so that's where there is an opportunity to utilize what we have now to just be able to support members a bit better in the way that we're categorizing and sharing that content with them. I don't know if you've got anything to sort of add to that, Ben, or other than just
No, but I think there's another question that I was keen to consider in this whole area, because having been asked this before in different roles, the question sometimes comes, well, why would I go to an event? If I can watch this all online, why would I go to the event? And that's something we need to work through as well, because there has to be an added value to participation, and there has to be the opportunity for people to participate. And if you are watching on demand at a later stage, it might be just a presentation. Whereas if you're in the room, there's the discussion, there's the debate, there's the network, and it will help to really sort of understand why being at the event would add value. Because what we don't want to do is create an environment where we're saying, by the way, never turn up to an event, it's all online. We don't want to do that. This is about participation, but also access as well. So again, this is part of the structure and the ongoing learning to ensure that people are seeing the community as a great place to network, as well as to learn and share best practice.
Thank you, Ben. We had another question from Dave around are we properly kind of aligned and thinking around sort of apprenticeships and other training and products that BCS offer?
Yeah, that's a very confident yes and a very immediate yes. And the reason why I say that is because we have been working with our colleagues in those areas as well. Because again, without wishing to go through the internal mechanics, I want to ensure that membership is adding value to those products. We want to ensure that people who go on apprenticeship want to leverage membership, want to have a membership, because it helps them with their learning. So ensuring that we are tagged, back to Sharon's point, against certain apprenticeships is also of value. So people who are on apprenticeship or a degree accreditation can look at the real world practicing leaders and what they're doing in their industries or verticals and apply that to their learning. I'm not sure whether the question was going this direction, but just to share if that was the case, there's a difference between CPD content and training, and we don't want to overstep that line into training. We're there to assist people with their training and their learning, not to suggest that by going on to our CPD content platform and looking at community events and BCS publications that somehow you now know and can complete an apprenticeship. Of course you can't. But what we do want to do is ensure that we are additive to those learning experiences and that we're aligned to them as well.
Thank you, Ben. A couple of comments. So Martin Beers said there's methods of developing tagging taxonomies automatically following changing interests. These are based on online sales, but can be used effectively for learning experiences. These, and then they can be refined by editors. So for instance, he's given like Wikipedia as a wiki edits type approach to how you might be able to do that.
Thank you.
Tassim's also just made a comment just to say video recording is very useful for those who are unable to attend meetings, and I guess Tassim's also thinking from a kind of international perspective of being able to engage with BCS overseas. Thank you for those comments. It is getting to 6:30, and I think I said in the intro that Ben was it training for a race, and I actually meant to say he was racing for a train.
Thank you, John.
Stumbled on my word. So I know Ben, long distance travel this evening. So thank you very much for joining, Ben. If there are any more questions, feel free to get in touch afterwards. And Sharon, Ben, I'll make sure I give you both an introduction via email.
And the lights, John, are literally going off at BCS HQ. So I've got a feeling I'm going to be kicked out anyway. So thank you so much for your questions and your feedback. And you have a pleasant rest of your evenings. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Ben. Take care. Good night. Okay, so I'm just going to come back to the how bit then. So what we can do in the community to kind of support this. But just give me a moment to get to grips with my screen sharing. And you might just see a picture of my wedding from last year on screen. Okay. So yeah, sharing. Share. Cool. So I think I just flick through. I'm on to the how now. So I guess the key to this approach is fundamentally about if we're looking at scale, this is about better utilizing member group generated content. And if we look at the current world, groups will spend a lot of time with the planning of events, recruiting speakers, and holding excellent events. But then there's not much of a trail to that. And I think partly that's because we're not utilizing or repurposing that content so that it becomes accessible to people online afterwards. And that isn't the fault of groups, that's a fault of how we essentially support you. So current world would be, post-event, content gets top and tailed, then it's uploaded onto YouTube, and then it's left either for groups to promote it or users to kind of trip over it. And I think in the kind of the future world, what we've just described, it's about having intent from the start around how content can be multi-purposed. So it's a current world plus content is properly categorized. So we talked around the terminology of taxonomies, really clear learning outcomes. So if it is a piece of CPD content that you're creating, we need to be thinking from the start, what is the learner getting out of this, and what should they then be reflecting on as an outcome? So very much reflection, outcome oriented CPD content. And content actually, being really actively promoted to BCS members and using things like taxonomies, being able to ensure that we're getting the right content to the right person at the right stage of their career will be really important. And that's kind of where getting the right platform and stuff Ben's been working on comes into importance. Just looking back, and Ben mentioned it very briefly, what can we use that already exists? So as mentioned, we've got lots and lots of content already in existence. And what we need to do is, what we would like to do is, with your help, be able to identify content which is really, really good for the CPD stuff, and has a really clear CPD orientated and clear learning outcomes already from that content. And so sending that content over to me, and then I'll be able to work with the group on being able to kind of look at the learning outcomes, get things like reflection questions together. And so we're utilizing that good stuff which has happened perhaps over the last couple of years as our groups have kind of moved activity online. But as Ben suggested, we are very much kind of starting this from thinking about how we're going to start in future to produce content and the categorization of that content. But if you do have anything that you feel would be really, really good for this, which has already been created, an event you might have had in the last year, please do send my way, and we'll be able to look at if we can repurpose that for this new CPD platform. So, as I mentioned, the first solution probably is just a form to get us moving in the right direction with this. But it's not just any form. It will be really important to making sure that content's properly categorized and promoted to the right audience. Don't be frightened by the question number. So we're going to be asking groups when submitting events to start using a bit more of a form so we can make sure we're getting all the event information structured appropriately. There's not 59 questions every time you fill out an event. It's just we haven't quite got the branching right. There's just 59. There's just quite a lot of different sections in the form relating to different formats of events, but you would only ever fill out one part of that and then look at the CPD. So yeah, looking at event learning outcomes. And so looking at each time when an event's submitted, just identifying if that content being created is a piece of CPD. And then just advising you on how you might reflect on that. So looking at the Sphere framework, for instance. And then kind of what theme it might fall under. So we've got, I think, quite a long list of this kind of general categorization to get started with. Here's just an example, but this is the kind of information we'll be requesting. And then very explicit learning outcomes. And also 3 questions that attendees would be able to kind of answer after the event to test their knowledge and to be able to reflect that they've kind of understood the content that they would have consumed. And then finally, for the how, really, it's the kind of audience and promotion. So being able to identify at the point of creating an event or a piece of content who the intended audience is, and that will help us with how we promote it to members in MyBCS and newsletters, and making sure when people are self-discovering this content, they'll be able to kind of look at what stage they're in a career and then what content that they'll need to help them with their next step of learning. And this uses kind of roughly some of the personas that we've built around our membership product so far. Great, so that's a bit of a how. Happy to take any kind of immediate questions on that. I know it's probably not quite as exciting as the stuff that that Ben's been talking about, but if there are any questions, happy to kind of run through that now. And then following that, we'll just go into a bit of breakout groups just to kind of to answer a few questions, give you an opportunity to meet some other members of the community. Hi there, Sharon, if you'd like to unmute.
Okay, so just to say that articulated intended learning outcome is not an easy task. Will you give people an example or a grid or a drop-down menu? What's the plan?
Yeah, so far, I've considered it an easy task, probably unfairly. So in the form at the moment, there isn't a kind of example, but yeah, that's a good suggestion for sort of improving that process to get people really thinking about what a learning outcome would be.
That would be a CPD opportunity to learn how to articulate learning outcomes.
Yeah, you might need to become a teacher as part of that process. Yeah, so not such an easy task, but of course, I think that's a good suggestion to have some good guidance there, just to think on what are those, what would be sensible learning outcomes for an event. Okay, just skimming through. Simon's just shared a couple of previous events, thank you. And Mary Hawkins also just suggested some of the primary healthcare educational videos. Actually, that's really good kind of steer there, thank you. And Kerry's just suggested when you're looking at learning outcomes, also just to kind of engage with your speaker. So they might be a seasoned pro, and so they might be very used to kind of talking in an academic setting in which would, the focus would be on those learning outcomes. So definitely some engagement with your speaker. And Dave's just asked around some historical, I guess, some analysis around attendance of live events and views later on. So we don't get reports. So I know it's a slightly tangent, but we don't get reports from all groups on kind of physical events. Typically, it'll only be like live events taking place in our London office where we'll get reports back on who's turned up. And I think a couple of groups who have kind of seasoned pros, member groups, would kind of send that stuff in to us as part of their general admin. So here, an important question, how long to fill out the form? So once we've got the branching correct, it should only be sort of a 5-minute process. So questions we already ask you around, once you get into the thinking of it, it should be information that your plan, that you have together, and that the form is just entering that content onto the form. You will ask a couple of questions which will help with just promoting an event generally, and then on top of that there's a section which is focused more on the kind of CPD elements of that.
Can I ask one more question? I didn't put my hand up. In terms of the accreditation for the learning, is the thinking to produce a certificate or some kind of an award, 1 hour of CPD learning? What's the plan for the platform?
So Ben's looking at badging as part of it. So badging is the approach that he's taken. I don't know if there's all the solutions just yet on what makes a full badge, what deserves a badge, what gets, so I think some of that's still kind of being worked on at the moment. But, I think part of it is that Ben wants the process to be about being proud and sharing that you've undertaken some learning. And so something which can be shared through social media, something which you're able to collect and be able to demonstrate that you conducted something CPD related is part of that thinking.
And that's really snazzy to have a badge, but is that coming from the membership? That's what they want, or do they want a certificate?
Ben's probably a better guy to ask on that kind of on that research there. But I will say we'll connect you with Ben afterwards, and you can have kick the tires on some of his ideas in a bit more detail there. Great. Okay, so we're now just going to move into as part of the session now, which is a bit more about you getting a chance to meet some of the other volunteers across different groups. And so we've got 3 questions that we're going to run through, but we're going to, each time we ask a question, we'll go into a breakout group. You have a chance to discuss it. You'll give a chance to give your experiences, ideas, and then what we'll do is ask you to come back after that question to then feedback. And so we'll do it, one question at a time. So the first question is really just about information sharing on what processes do you take to plan an event or content as a group. And this could be anything from, organizing, it could be, the typical bread and butter stuff of, how would you plan an event as a member group? How would you do your annual events program? What kind of discussions would you have as a group? Or would there someone lead on a topic? What research would you do? How would you find a speaker, and so on? So yeah, that's the first question we would like you to go into your groups and to ask. Kerry will be allocating everyone to a group. Could you just ensure that you have someone in the group who's a spokesperson, because after we've kind of come back, it'd be nice to have a bit of feedback on what you've discussed before tackling the next question. And me and Kerry will be doing the rounds of groups just to make sure that everybody understands the task. I can see a few people moving between rooms still, so we'll just hold on a moment until everyone's back in the room. Right, so I think I've documented a couple of members of each room just to give a quick kind of just summary of kind of the different experiences in planning an event or content as a group. I think in room 1 we had Zahir in that room. I'm not sure if you're the spokesperson or not, but I did note your name. Would you like to give a bit of feedback?
Yes. For example, this I started with myself because I was the first one to speak, and the way we do the event, we contact the speaker. Many of the time, most of them at the time, the speakers they come and ask us to speak, unless we want someone specific. We can get speakers as well from conferences, meeting somewhere else, like computing, women in telecom and technology, so any other professional membership. We ask the speaker to provide us with biography, title, and synopsis, and we check it. If we like it, start negotiating the date. All of that usually happens very quickly. Sometimes it takes 2 weeks, sometimes it could take a month. In one event, it took 2 months, like Boots, for example. We would like, I mean, to have more time. Ramjis are doing it more methodically, and they have one speaker per month plus the spring school, and they are very, very organized.
Yeah.
Nottingham Derby branch, they have their own form, and they do it. Also for Stratford University, I have Andrew. They have the meetings at random. They don't have many events at the moment. And I suggested at the end about joint events with another branches and specialist group. For Martin, which is South York branch, they have the speakers. They are unprepared to commit themselves for more than 2 months. So usually they do it 1 month in advance. Sharon is interested in the CPD, and VG primary care specialist group. They have 6 to 8 weeks, if I remember correctly, to do the event. And that's in summary.
Great. So it's a bit of a blend of approach. It's kind of either identifying speakers and then recruiting speaker by speaker. Some groups having a more programmatic approach. So starting off at the start of the year and then planning out all their events and content around that. So quite a difference in experiences and approaches there. I'd be interested if anybody kind of takes, when they're taking a pragmatic approach and kind of systematically might look at, do you start with content or do you start with a speaker? Does that? Speaker first.
At least for us.
Yeah.
Any of the other members, do you start with the content? No, we haven't spoken about that.
Okay, no worries. No, that's great. Thank you. I'm just going to come over to room 4 and just get some experiences. It was Dave Donahay's room, but I'm not sure if he was a spokesperson or if there was another spokesperson.
Well, Holly, do you want to do this, or I can do this one? But you can do if you like.
Do you want me to play back what I heard?
Yeah, go on, please.
So it was a shame because we timed out. We didn't get round everybody, which was a bit of a shame. But I think, there was a real variation of approaches. So Dave was talking about, I think initially you started with clear strategy, didn't you, in terms of live events for early careers and apprentices, and really thought that was, the right focus because people in early careers need the networking, whereas people later on probably would be more comfortable with virtual or not needing the contacts. So I think the strategy was really, really good, but you struggled to retain the volunteers who were going to take that forward. So it's kind of a bit untested. And then there was a big question about how do you choose speakers and events, and the fact that you contacted the fellows because you feel that they should have a really important role to play here in terms of creating the CPD and bringing their expertise to the groups, but hasn't had much feedback, so maybe more work to do on sort of mining that as a rich scene. Peter talked about Birmingham and Wolverhampton, which are both very, very different, and Birmingham branch with Jag, who set up the series of early careers talks, and in that was more about trying to do a program and creating a series with different speakers, and that went really, really well. So I think the general approach has always been to start with the speakers and think about who do you know, and it's been sort of a bit like that for 20 years, and Wolverhampton certainly is really struggling now. But I think there was a kind of question about whether HQ could provide a bit more coordination around things like resources and speaker lists, and also sort of a value in having a look at what other branches are doing and seeing whether you can borrow ideas, which I think is a there's a lot of merit to be said for that. And then Dave was just sort of weighing up, does it make sense for people to share speakers, or what is the role of branches? Because it should technically be that localized, experience with the physicality of sort of being in a location. So, and then it led on to whether we could get SG to sort of come around to the branches and give that local context, but provide that out to more groups. I think Peter said that, there have been a couple of examples. PromsG did it, and we could maybe widen that exposure for SGs and use that a bit more. And then we just started talking about the financial services approach and doing the hybrid events post-lockdown. And we did. Then we, Dave, have I missed anything there?
No, I think that's everything. Thanks.
Okay.
Super. So a breadth of or variation of kind of approaches taken from programmatic to almost kind of just a one-by-one identifying a speaker you might come across and being kind of really interested in what they're saying and be able to share with members. I was having a discussion with Chris Banks and CSC, and this might be applying more to kind of specialist groups, but there could be a way of utilizing, for instance, the Sophia framework to be able to then identify skills, and then taking that programmatic approach of going, then this year we want to do, I don't know, a group might be up to eight events a year, identify 8 key skills across that framework, and then build speakers from it. But I do appreciate there's, as volunteers, that could be quite a difficult task to then identify speakers to fit into a skill. So I know that there'll be kind of different approaches will work for different people. But we do hope around this question in particular that through CSC, Community Support Committee, will be able to kind of find that good practice, and where groups are doing it really, really well, be able to kind of make sure that others are able to kind of learn from that as well. I'm going to now dive into the second question. Mindful of time, I'm just going to cut this down into a quick 5-minute discussion, as you've already had a chance with some of the introductions. And it's just a really quick take on what does good CPD look like to you as an individual. So, if you're about to take some CPD, if you'd be interested in CPD, what would that kind of look like? Think about formats, types of content, how long that content might be, and what would you feel would be a good learning outcomes. So think about a broad set of aspects, but just what would you kind of look for in CPD and feel valuable, feel that it's valuable. I'm going to pass back to Kerry to put you on your groups again, and just to tackle that one, if you could just make sure that you get as much input from the whole group as possible, that would be excellent. Thank you. If you'd be able to just temporarily make sure you're muted as well, because there's a bit of background noise at the moment. I think I can hear an road traffic in the background. It's taking the call on the move. Great. So I hope you had a good discussion there on, I know it was very brief, but a quick discussion there on kind of what would you value in CPD. I'm going to try a couple of the other rooms this time around. So Simon, just wondering how you got on in your group on that question.
Well, on that question, I think how do I put this delicately? I think the members of or the majority in the group were beyond the point where CPD was going to be important in our careers, even if we still have careers.
Well done. I think you put that very well.
I think the key point that we had was that the BCS doesn't operate in isolation here, and there are employers have CPD schemes of their own, which if BCS is going to succeed in having the CPD, it's got to integrate with those where there are large employers. And secondly, in terms of badging and so on, my experience is that the younger professionals who are developing their careers are much more interested in the major technology suppliers schemes, Microsoft, Cisco, AWS, and Oracle, etc. They want that they want those certifications because they're guaranteed to be portable and they're well-known benchmarks as to where they've achieved in their careers. I think BCS needs to be very clear how it adds value to employers over and above those sort of frameworks.
That's really useful, and congratulations, you did articulate your demographic very very well. Thank you, Simon. And yeah, and of course we won't build all plans based on just this evening's session, so a bit more wider research on what people value in CPD. I'm just going to come around to the other Simon as well, whether you had anything to add to that, or is it kind of more of the same? Or
well, we did start out with the observation, indeed, that none of us seem to actually need CPD in our personal lives. And we also had one or two observations about how most people consider CPD as to be a kind of nuisance that they have to do for their employers, which and therefore maybe CPD should be kind of as pain-free as possible. And you have the sense that a lot of people don't value CPD activities other than to be able to say that they've counted up so many hours. But of course that's a nonsense in terms of it being of any real value. And I think the emphasis therefore has to be on how you actually make it to be of real value to people. And I don't know how you might make that a reality, but certainly most of the training courses I've been on in recent years myself have just been so trivial. They're kind of like an exercise in short-term memory while you pass the accreditation test.
Thanks for that, Simon. And yeah, so I think that's a really interesting point, actually. So around positioning of CPD, I think particularly, because yeah, I'll happily go on to, I don't know, professionals might go on to things like GitHub or whatever and pick up learnings that way, but they might not see that necessarily as CPD stuff, right? They're just doing stuff to help them with their job. So yeah, a really good point there. Positioning will be really important, and how it supports people. But also with our, code of conduct, there is that commitment to people sort of supporting, developing as professionals as well. So hopefully as members of BCS, there's that kind of maybe a slight difference in kind of view to that development. Okay, so thank you to the Simons for those contributions there. We're just going to go into final breakout sessions, and this is again just a really quick. We'll go down to 5 minutes. I think we're due to finish at 7:30 today, and I don't want to keep you waiting for your dinners. Just a quick question now on how can content from live events be repurposed for members to access who might not be attending that live event? So I think this is probably coming from the perspective that often, an event, you might get 30 to 50 people there. As a wider member group, you might have a couple of thousand people. So if you're not attending events, how might you be able to utilize that content? And so the different formats of content, I guess we're talking about here. So quick 5 minutes on it. I know it's not a lot of time. Hello, welcome back, everybody. So just going to go another quick round of feedback. We'll go back to our original groups. So I think Holly, you found yourself appointed as spokesperson for that group. I don't know if that's still the case or whether you've switched.
I didn't mean to. I'm just taking the notes so I can send them to you afterwards. I have got it in front of me, but we had everybody sort of made a point in this one around. Chikati was saying that the financial services SG, they got into a really good habit of once the event's done, we put them directly onto the YouTube, and then they actually asked Kerry to make sure that it was sent out to the attendees afterwards. So they've got that delivery mechanism, and are getting good feedback from that. So people actually get it fed to their inbox straight afterwards, and feel that they can then share it with networks, even if the people themselves wouldn't re-watch it, they can then share it with other colleagues, and just so having it available was important. Dave was just saying, you know, he's kind of a bit curious as to how people really consume the content if they don't turn up, and because they're unlikely to sit through the whole lot. But, you know, there's a really good kind of model perhaps where you can do a brief thing as a teaser and then whet the appetite, and then if people, and then do a follow-on which is more of a deep dive. And then Charlie was just saying that you know, it's really important for new people that the key points and takeaways are summarized, so they don't have to get the full recording, but the challenge would be then how do we curate it. And then we started saying that actually there has been quite a bad trend of people just getting into the habit of registering for something, not going, just so that they'll get the materials, but we didn't have time to expand on that point, and probably the view is that that's not ideal either. So that was it, really. Did I miss anything, Dave?
No, I think you're good. I think that's fine. Thanks.
Okay.
Super, thank you. And back to Sahir as well. Sahir. Not sure if Sahir's still here. Sahir? You're on mute, Ollie. Yeah, there you are.
Sorry. It's more or less the same. We record the event unless the speaker doesn't want to, and we ask the committee groups, the groups also to upload it into the website, not a website, the BCS channel, and also we have the presentation on the website. Everything more or less the same. VG, he edits some of his records. I mean, the rest of us, most of us, I mean, we don't have the experience to do that.
Yeah.
And we don't have the recording itself as well, because it's done in the BCS office. Did I forget anything else? No, that's it.
Silence. Great. Thank you, Sahir. Thank you, Holly. Yes, I guess probably the added thing to that then is maybe just thinking of different formats of content which could be created. So whether it is just looking, you know, if you're holding an event, that's all about the kind of physical attendance, participation, the networking. And if it's for kind of online consumption, maybe then we're starting to broach into, you know, different formats, so short form, or, you know, even kind of podcasts that people can kind of listen to on the train. But that's a whole new world of content creation at BCS that would be new to us all, and hopefully something we can explore. Yes, so here, yeah.
We need training.
Yeah, or support to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, great. Okay, so interest of time, just going to quickly wrap up. Thank you all so much for joining this evening. Really great response to Ben's presentation, and thank you for your input. Hopefully you got a chance to meet some new faces amongst the volunteer community, as well as kind of share some ideas on just how you organize your activities. Just going to quickly share screen again, just on follow up on what's next. Hopefully it's sharing. Yeah, I think it's sharing now. So the CPD content categorization, we're going to be testing out the new event submission forms, which help us to do that and help us to kind of apply a taxonomy and understanding of learning outcomes with groups, and then looking to kind of expand more widely in February. But we just want to make sure we get that balance of kind of, you know, capture right, and that the relevant guidance is in place for people to understand what they need to do that. Any events which you feel like were really strong CPD events last year, but we could retrospectively badge or position as content in this new platform that Ben was discussing, please send my way, so jjeffrey@bcs.uk, or any wider questions you might have, and I'll be happy to kind of put in contact with Ben on, or any feedback on kind of approaches to CPD. Please do send my way, and I will help with that coordination. What's coming up next in the member groups program? So we've got a session on finance, so a bit of training, a bit of process around budgeting, which we're going to be advertising shortly. And I've annoyingly got a Zoom bar over that date. So 20th of February, we'll be doing that, and that will be out with you shortly. Our next volunteer induction, so for any new committee members you might have, is being held on the 9th of March, and that gives an introduction to organisation and kind of relevant kind of requirements for member groups and kind of where you can get support. That's on the 9th of March. So if you have new committee members, please do suggest that they attend that. And then our spring convention, so next time we'll be bringing people together, and our first convention, which will be kind of organised by our community support committee, will be taking place on the 18th of April. So thank you all for joining this evening. It's been really nice to see you all. Thank you for joining this afternoon, those who are able to make both sessions. All the feedback is much appreciated, and it's been great to kind of hear your ideas and see the community in action. So thank you. Enjoy your evenings, and look forward to seeing you at our next event. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.